I suggest you get all the lights in your house installed and functioning, because they work whether they're tied into the Leviton app or anything. They work by themselves. That's a great default setting for these, because you don't need to do any smart anything at all, and they will function just how the lights in your house functioned before. They turn on, they turn off. This little tab on the side here, you can set it up, and then every time you go up is actually a 10% interval in power all the way to 100%. Okay? So everything will function once you get the lights installed as normal, and then you can do the smart items later as far as tying it into apps. One thing about the My Leviton app and the smart switches is I found a firmware glitch that they are aware of, but if you have an iOS device running 14, some of their older switches that are out there on shelves do not work with iOS 14. They also, as of right now, do not work with the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 or the S20 or Note 20. Those manufacturers, Samsung and Apple, came out with new devices, and sometimes they don't always check with third-party developers, and those new softwares are not backdated well enough to actually get one of the switches online. So sometimes it's nice to have an older device. I use a Note 5 or an older tablet sometimes to actually get the switch hooked up. Once it's hooked up and you do the firmware update on that device, it will work with every device. iOS 14, all the newer phones, everything. You just need an archived phone or device sometimes to actually get the switch firmware updated. So once your switch is installed, faceplate's all done, you're ready to actually put the power back on and see if it works, you're going to want to install the My Leviton app. And the My Leviton app is going to be how you program and get the switch on your Wi-Fi to use it in My Leviton and or add it to Google Nest or Alexa or so on and so forth. So, what you're going to do once you're all set, this is my mock breaker. I'm going to flip that on, and you're going to see a green light come on at the bottom. Okay? That means you got everything wired correctly. If you don't have the green light, something's not correct. Okay? It's going to start flashing the green light pretty quickly, and then from there, you are going to go and hit the plus sign in your My Leviton app and hit Add Device. It gives you the option for dimmer, for switch, for plug-in, so on and so forth. We have a dimmer, so I'm going to click on that. Before we start, is your device installed, and is the light flashing green? It is flashing green, so I'm going to hit Yes, Let's Go. And then it's going to ask to go to your Wi-Fi settings. And from there, you're going to want to find the actual Leviton device and connect to the Wi-Fi of the device. Once you're there, you're going to want to go back to your Leviton app, and it's going to say connecting to your system. So, then from there, it's going to load the Wi-Fi's in the house, and you're going to want to connect this to the Wi-Fi of the house. So you're going to hit next, and then you're going to type the password to that Wi-Fi. And if you have a lot of these, check that remember my password, because then you won't have to do this over and over and over again. It'll just remember. So once it connects to your Wi-Fi, it's going to ask you to pick an icon. I'm going to pick the dimmer icon. The next step is going to ask for you to name this device. Now, I'm going to name this back patio because that's where the switch is going to go. It is very important that you name your switches correctly at this step, because when you go to add them to your other devices, such as Alexa or such as Google Nest or so on and so forth, it's going to carry that name through. So it'll show up in My Leviton, as well as it'll show up in your Alexa app as the same name. So naming is very important in what I call the Echo universe or any smart home, because you always will have a third-party app that you pull in, and then when you pull that in, you want your naming to be the same across, so if you ever have to troubleshoot down the road, you don't have things mismatched or misnamed. Finally, it's going to ask you to assign a room. I normally don't do this in the My Leviton app, mainly because everything that I wire up is done through Google Nest or Alexa. and then I do all my rooming structure inside those devices versus the My Leviton app. If you are not going to be using those devices, I would highly suggest grouping your names here for activities inside the app or different programming options down the road.